Assalamu alaikum. I'm Shahana Firdausi, lecturer of economics. After a long gap, I have come with chapter 7, inflation. This chapter, inflation, is actually very important for HSC examinees. When you say about inflation, we understand that something is inflating. So from this chapter, we'll understand what is inflation, what size of something is inflating, what is that. Okay, so let us know. And inflation, we know that it is a familiar word. We usually hear it in news that inflation, this is the rate of inflation in this country, that country, in our country, like this. So let us know what is inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is defined as sustainable increase in the general price level for goods and services over a period of time in an economy. So inflation we can define this way, that when price of goods and services increases for long time, not for a particular time, but it is a price of the product increasing slowly over a period of time, and uh, that put effect on the lifestyle of general people, that is called inflation. That means due to inflation, uh, price rises of that type of product that usually general people depend, that goods and services, and when price rises, it hampers their usual purchasing power, and so that they can buy less goods and services with the same amount of money than before. So inflation is defined as sustainable increase in the general price level for goods and services over a period of time in an economy. So when price of goods and services increase, then with the same level, same amount of money, same unit of money, we can buy less amount of goods and services. So we can understand, when price of the goods increases, that means value of money decreases. As value of money decreases, that's why people's purchasing power decreases. So inflation reflects a reduction in the purchasing power of per unit of money, that is, money value decreases as more money is needed to buy the same amount of commodities. Here is a picture we can understand by this picture. Here we see this is a scale of measurement, and one side this is money and another side a good. So we see that as price of product increases, so that we have to pay more amount of money than before, or with the same amount of money we can buy less amount of product, so that you see this side it becomes heavy, money side it's become heavy, and price and product side, that is lighter. So this means, what is inflation? Inflation means when price of goods and services increases, that will affect on the general standard of life of people, because their purchasing power decreases with the same amount of income, and we understand that due to inflation, that's why money value decreases. And of course this is for a long over that is for a uh, long period of time. That means price, there is a sustainable increase in price. Okay, so let us see, different economists define inflation in different way. Economist Colborn says inflation is such a situation when too much money chases too few goods. Okay, this you have to remember this definition always, because sometimes it comes in the MCQ, that who says inflation is such a situation when too much money chases too few goods. What does it mean? Too much money chases too few goods. That means for fewer amount of goods, you need to spend more money. Okay. Then P. Samuelson says if the total flow of purchasing power coming on the market is not matched by sufficient flow of goods, price will tend to rise. Okay, that means when there is more, that means when flow of money is more in market than the amount of goods and service produced in economy, then price of the product tend to rise. So total flow of purchasing power coming on the market, that means actually total flow of money that we see in the economy, that is more than the total supply of goods and services in the economy, and that time price will rise. So what is the meaning of flow of money increase in economy? For various reasons, money flow can be increased in economy, but in the short term, if goods and services are produced less than that, then people purchase, then the money that is in hand of people, they can buy, they have demand, but they cannot buy sufficient amount of goods and services, so that goods and price of that goods and services increases, and that is the situation of inflation. Then Lord Keynes says in case of full employment, amount of production remaining fixed, if price level increases through increasing demand, will be the real inflation. Lord Keynes explained about the real inflation situation. That means when there is full employment of resources. Okay, full employment of what? Full employment of resources. When there is full employment of resources, there is no more resource to produce more goods and services, so that in case of full employment, amount of production remaining fixed. So in that case, if demand increase, then there is no more resource to meet the excess demand, and so that price level increases. Okay, this is the explanation of this definition. In case of full employment, amount of production remaining fixed, if price level increases through increasing demand, will be the real inflation. So this is the situation which Keynes called real inflation. So from this discussion, what characteristics we have got? That is, inflation is a long-term process. That is, if suddenly price of any product increases suddenly, then we will not say that inflation. Actually, inflation is a long-term process which fall effect on the common goods and services that general people use, and slowly the price of the product increases, and it will effect on the standard of life of people, so that it is a long-term process. And just sometimes ago I said that price level increases continuously. Okay, it is not a sudden incident. Price level increases continuously. Then purchasing power of money or money value decreases as more money is needed to buy same amount of product. As price of the product increases, so that means purchasing power of every unit of money decreases, that means money value decreases. And in this situation, when inflation occurs, we see aggregate demand becomes more than aggregate supply of goods and services. Okay, why aggregate demand more? Because there is more flow of money in economy, so that aggregate demand more, but aggregate supply of goods and services is less than aggregate demand, because in short period of time goods and services production cannot be increased quickly, but there is more demand, and in that case, if resources are fully employed, it is not possible to meet up the excess demand with more supply, and in that case price increases. So aggregate demand becomes more than aggregate supply of goods and services. This situation we see, and very normally for that more money is spent for less amount of goods and services. Creeping inflation accelerates economic activity. What is the meaning of that? It means that I have said some times ago that inflation is a long-term process. That means price of the product increases continuously, slowly and continuously. So when price increases by 2 to 3%, that is slowly price increase, in the rate of increment of price is slow, that is 2 to 3%. That type of inflation is called creeping inflation, and that accelerates economic activity, because when price of products increase slowly, then more or less people can adjust with that increment, and so that it increase the it encourages investors to invest more, and so that economic activity increases, and it increases the national income of the economy. So creeping inflation accelerates economic activity. Then inflation is measured as an annual percentage increase, that is every year inflation is measured, that is what amount or what rate, what percentage inflation has increased this year than the previous year, or compared with the base year. So inflation is measured in an annual percentage increase. So according to the speed or rapidity of price rise, inflation can be classified in a following ways. That is how much uh, price is rising, that is what is the speed, what is the rapidity of that price rise. Depending on that, inflation can be classified in following ways. Number one is creeping inflation. That means when price rise within a range of 2 to 3%, it is the mildest form of inflation. So when we see that price rise within a range of 2% to 3% per annum, then we can say this is the mildest form of inflation, and it is good for economy. Sometimes this question comes that why creeping inflation is good for economy, or is creeping inflation good for economy? This type of question. Yes, creeping inflation is good for economy because it brings encouragement of more investment. Because 2 to 3% increase in price can adjust consumers' purchasing capability. So consumers can adjust themselves with 2 to 3% increase in price, and so that investors also uh, they get encouragement to invest more, and so that economic activity increases. Then what is working inflation? When price rises at the speed of more than 3% to 10%. Okay, when price rises more than creeping inflation and in between 3 to 10%, then we call it working inflation. That means the rate of inflation is more than creeping inflation here, so it is called working inflation. Then third is running inflation. What is running inflation? When price ranges between 10% to 20%. 10% to 20%. This is called running inflation. That is per annum price is rising at the rate 10% to 20%. And sometimes it even cross this rate also, and it may reach to 3-digit rate. And when there is this rate of running inflation is very high, then we call it hyper or galloping inflation. What is hyper galloping inflation? It is very dangerous for the economy as price rises every moment and it has no upper limit where it will reach. If price rise by more than 20% and cannot be controlled by government, that means uncontrollable way the price is rising, and in that case people lose trust on the currency of that country. That means the currency loses its value. So this hyper galloping inflation, it is not expected by any economy. Running inflation also, this is not expected, and sometimes we experience working inflation in our country. uh, every country it experiences, but all government try to uh, hold the rate of inflation within 2 to 3%. That is, they want to hold their economy in the creeping inflation rate. Now let us know the types of inflation. Actually, types of inflation, it uh, it depends on the reasons of inflation. Okay, so there are so many reasons behind price rises. So there are so many reasons, so that so many types of inflation, but all that types of inflation we can categorize into general two kinds, that is two basic types, that are one is demand pull inflation and another one is cost push inflation. Okay, so demand pull inflation, that means when consumers demand is higher for the goods and services, but they are not getting that much of goods and services they are demanding in economy, that time price of the goods services. But why demand increases? Because there is more flow of money in economy, but comparatively goods and services are not increased in that rate, and so that supply of goods and services are less than demand for goods and services, and so that price of goods and services increase. That is called demand pull inflation. And another side is cost push inflation. What is the cost push? This is from producer side. We will see that cost push, that means when uh, production cost increases, due to production cost increases, supplier cannot supply goods and services like before, so there is short supply, and due to that price of goods and service increases. So why production cost increases? There are so many reasons. So in one category we can bring it in cost push inflation. So let us see one by one. We will express it graphically also. Graphical presentation will be here. See, there is a diagram. We see that is for demand pull inflation. Here is a supply curve, but this supply curve is parallel to the vertical axis. Okay, and demand curve is the usual demand curve, that is downward sloping from left to right side. Here we see supply curve is straight supply curve. It is not upward sloping. There is no slope. Why? Because here this supply represents that resources of the economy are fully employed, so that whatever the price, supply of goods cannot be increased by supplier, so that here supply curve is parallel to the vertical axis. That means total supply is supply of goods and services OQ0. So in this case, if demand for goods and services increases, you see here is D1 demand curve, D2 demand curve. That means demand curve increases from D1 to D2, and so that here you see supply curve, demand curve D1. The equilibrium point is A. But when with the limited supply, when demand for goods and services increases to D2, then equilibrium point shifted from A to B. That is, this supply curve and D2 demand curve intersect each other and new equilibrium is B. So according to new equilibrium, we see that price rises from P1 to P2. That means when resources are fully employed, there is no more chance to increase supply of goods and services. In that case, if demand for product increases, it increases the price of the product, which is called as real inflation. So this is explained here. You see here D equals to aggregate demand for goods and services, this D, and S supply curve of goods and services when resources are fully employed, so that this shape of supply curve is used here. Price increases from P1 to P2. Why? As aggregate demand increases from D1 to D2. While supply curve is fully inelastic, this shape of supply curve, we call it inelastic supply curve. Okay, that means whatever the price, supply doesn't change, so that it is inelastic. That is, whatever the price, supply of goods and services cannot be increased due to full employment of resources to meet the excess demand. As excess demand increases the general price level of this type of uh, demand increase the general price level, in this type of situation it is called demand pull inflation. So hope you have understood. Now let us go to the cost push inflation. So it is also is represented by a graph, and here you see that a normal supply curve, that is upward sloping supply curve, have been used here, and demand curve is, that is normal shape demand curve is used here. And cost push inflation, that means I told sometimes ago that cost push inflation, that is production cost increases the price of the product. That's why it is called cost push inflation. That means there is inflation due to production cost becomes high. So when production cost becomes high, when price of raw materials increases, price of machineries increases, wage of laborers increases, then petrol, diesel, this price increases, then the production cost becomes high, and in that case it is not possible for producers to supply like before. In that case, supply of goods and services decreases in economy. This we see in this diagram. You see that is the demand curve DD, and S0 S0, this is the first supply curve in economy, that is E0 is the equilibrium point and equilibrium price is P0. Well, due to increase in cost of production, supplier decreases the supply of goods and services in economy, and so that supply curve shifted to the left side, that is S1 supply curve. And for this reason, you see equilibrium point shifted from E0 to E1, which results to increase in price from P0 to P1. So in this way, due to production cost increases, inflation occurs in economy. This is explained here. Here D equals to aggregate demand for goods and services, this D, and S supply curve of goods and services. Due to increase in production cost, like increase in cost of raw materials, machineries, increase in wage of labor, high cost of technology, etc., suppliers reduce the supply of goods and services in the market. So supply curve shifted to the left side in the diagram from S0 to S1. So equilibrium point shifted from E0 to E1. which increases price from P0 to P1. So increase in production cost pushes the general price level upward. That's why it is called cost push inflation. So hope you have understood how increase in production cost accelerates the general price level, and this is called cost push inflation. Now let us see effect of inflation on economy. Inflation has an adverse effect on economy, but some get harmed from price hike. On the other hand, some people get benefited from inflation. So let us see the benefit, who benefits from inflation and who are the losers. Let us see. Beneficiary from inflation, you see, rich businessmen and rich farmers. Who are rich? They get benefited from inflation because they make profit from their production, from their sale, from high price of commodities. Okay, so they can make profit, so that rich businessmen and rich farmers get benefited from inflation. Now let us see what about borrowers. Borrowers means who borrow money from other persons or other groups or other institutions. So borrowers benefit from inflation as they have to return the same amount of money they borrowed, but value of money decreases that time due to inflation. Okay, so that borrowers benefit from inflation because the money they have borrowed due to inflation, though the same amount of money they are returning back, but actually purchasing power of that money falls. That is, that value of that amount of money falls. But they are giving the same amount of money, so they are the winner here. They are the gainer. Borrowers are the gainer. Now what about taxpayers? Taxpayers also get benefited from inflation because they can arrange the tax by selling less amount of their properties than before as price of the commodities increases. That means price of their properties increases. So they can arrange the money to pay tax by selling less amount of properties than before. Okay, so taxpayer get benefited from inflation. So these are the main groups who get benefited. Now let us see the harmful effect of inflation. You see the fixed income earners who earn a fixed amount after the end of a month, low income groups and laborers fall in hardship to run their family expenditure with their fixed income, since with fixed income their purchasing power falls. Okay, with their fixed amount of income they have to buy the product, that's price increases, so that their purchasing power falls. They cannot buy the goods and services as they need like before. So that they fixed income earners lose from inflation, from price hike. Now lenders who lend money, they lose from inflation because the amount of money they lend, the value of that decreases when they get back the money. Okay, because lenders lend the money, but when they get back the money value is not the same as before. Due to inflation, money value decreases, so they are the loser. Now let us see about a country's export and import. A country's export-import business get harmed by inflation because you see due to inflation export products become expensive. Okay, because price of the products increases inside the country. So when we export that, we see that export products become expensive, and again imports become cheaper compared to domestic markets goods. So export decreases in the world market, in the competitive world market. Export decreases due to high price, and import in our country increases due to comparatively it becomes cheaper than domestic goods. So when we see that export decreases and import increases, so our foreign currency earning falls, because as import increases we are spending more money, and export decreases so that we are earning less amount of money. That means we are earning less but we are spending more, so that our foreign currency earning falls. There is social effect also, that is continuous inflation creates income inequality and class conflict between employers and laborers, result to social unrest. Okay, so due to inflation, as fixed income earners become they are loser, so they become poorer, but rich farmers, rich businessmen, they can earn more profit, so that income inequality is seen in economy, and also class conflict, that is employers try to and there is a class conflict between employers and laborers, which results to social unrest. So these are the harmful effect of inflation, and we have seen who are gainer also. From this discussion we have understood what is inflation, and the type of inflation, that is demand pull and cost pull inflation, and that is on the basis of and also on the basis of the uh, rate of rate of that is speed of inflation. What are the type of we can categorize inflation in four types, that is creeping inflation, walking inflation, then running inflation, galloping inflation. Then we have learned also the about demand pull inflation and cost pull inflation, and also the effect of inflation on economy. So I hope this will help you for your HSC examination. Inshallah, I will come with more video next. So thank you very much. Best of luck.